Initially, they encouraged me to do a traditional speech. And then I told them that, hey, I think you got the wrong guy. I was just giving them a tip that to be a great investor, look for things that are misunderstood. There are other things that are misunderstood. Bitcoin just happens to be the example I wanted to use because I think it's the most misunderstood. I've never been booed in front of that many people. So yeah, it was hard. It was hard.
All right, with us today, the mastermind behind one of the most talked about commencement speeches in recent memory. Maybe for Bitcoin, maybe not for Bitcoin. Chris Pan here with us. Chris, thanks so much for hopping on Coinage, man.
Thank you for having me. This is my first Bitcoin-related show.
I think it's the first time anyone has probably seen Bitcoin mentioned. We were just talking about this at a commencement speech, so it's got a lot of attention for that. But obviously, it was just a small little snippet of the entire speech. I mean, how has the reaction and everything else that we've seen over the last couple of days, how have you been processing it?
It's quite a spectrum. I think on one hand, people are very excited and people think it's absolute genius. And on the other hand, people think it was absolutely inappropriate and deplorable. So I've got two ends of the spectrum in my inbox.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone viral before. It's kind of a crazy experience. I've also given a commencement speech before, so I know how much thought goes into delivering that and what you kind of want to do in the moment. So, I mean, you personally, relative to what you wanted to see happen, I mean, people are talking about it.
Yeah, I'm the kind of person where I am really obsessed about impact, and I really want people to take something tangible away. So hopefully that was accomplished. At least people are thinking about it. And hopefully over time, even the folks that maybe initially was resistant to the idea will open up. And, I think a lot of times it takes multiple interactions with an idea for it to really land. So this was maybe
that's kind of, I think that's kind of the biggest thing to play too, though, because everyone's, I mean, I don't know if you agree, but I think it went viral and blew up, at least in a lot of our community, the crypto community, because of the boos that came when you mentioned Bitcoin. So I wanted to play that clip just because I think it's a lot of what people have seen probably, but I want to get your reaction in the moment when you felt the crowd reaction. Let's play the piece of you mentioning Bitcoin and kind of your reaction to it. Take a listen.
Great investors are open-minded and understand things before other people. So I know this might feel polarizing, but I encourage you to keep an open mind right now. I see Bitcoin as a very misunderstood asset class.
So your exhale right there, I think, kind of proves the whole point, is that you said it was misunderstood and you have half the stadium booing. I mean, what was that like in that moment?
It was not easy. May have been one of the tougher moments of my life. I've never been booed by, I don't know how many people were actually booing, maybe 100, 500, 1,000, 10,000. I don't know. I have no idea. But I've never been booed in front of that many people. So yeah, it was hard. It was hard.
Why do you think they were booing, though? Because it's almost as if they weren't booing you in that moment. They were booing, I guess, a mention of Bitcoin because you brought it up. And also, we'll play the context of why you brought it up. But
I think there are two things happening. One is, maybe some people thought it wouldn't be appropriate to talk about Bitcoin at a commencement. That may have been part of it. And then secondly, maybe some people had been burned before. Or thirdly, they may have associated Bitcoin with meme coins and pump and dump and all that. And I think most likely, I'm guessing they think that I'm one of those people who've been in Bitcoin for decades and am just trying to pump it up. I've only been in Bitcoin for 3 months. So I am a recent, I recently really understood it, and I just wanted to share it the same way I've been sharing with my friends and family. So,
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could go through that because I think your speech was kind of laid out in a couple different ways in terms of financial wellness, emotional wellness, I guess, spiritual wellness, all kinds of elements that you would expect to have.
I never actually told anyone to buy Bitcoin. That's the big understanding and misperception. I think as a society, we have a problem with listening, sadly. And all I said was, my main topics was learn how to invest, take care of your emotional self, and take care of your spiritual self, right? And as related to investing, I was just giving them a tip that to be a great investor, look for things that are misunderstood. There are other things that are misunderstood. Bitcoin just happens to be the example I wanted to use because I think it's the most misunderstood. Same with singing. I think, you could have dancing, you could have journaling as other emotional release practices. but I think singing is the most underutilized one. And then intention setting is the example I wanted to use for spiritual freedom. So Bitcoin was just an example of something to look into. I didn't say go put your life savings in a Bitcoin or anything.
It's true. You didn't, but you did set it up pretty well in terms of, I think, lessons that a new generation who's graduating college should know. And I thought you did a pretty good job of kind of explaining where some of these economic problems came from. And
That I'm very passionate about. I am super upset about what's going on with inflation. And that is what got me really deep into the Bitcoin world.
well, let's play that clip too, though, because I think it was a point that I enjoyed. It was that savings not enough by itself. Here's what you had to say.
Yeah. Saving is not enough because inflation exploded after the pandemic, which is why everything got so expensive. Our government printed so much money for special projects and wars. Guess who's paying for it? The mechanics of investing are actually easy, but it comes down to mindset. The most common barriers are fear, laziness, and closed-mindedness.
Now, if it's not the only commencement speech that's ever mentioned Bitcoin, Chris, I think it might definitely be the only commencement speech that's ever brought up a Fred chart in showing M1 money supply and what's been happening since the pandemic. So you went deep, but I mean, it's an important point.
I treated this as if my brother was graduating or as if I was graduating. And I didn't want to just give a bunch of platitudes and just say, hey, go chase your dreams, whatever. I wanted like actionable things we could do tomorrow. Things that get me upset, things that I'm really frustrated about. I wanted to get it in there. What's the point of talking about chasing your dreams when we are not going to be able to, afford it?
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the most interesting pieces, too, in terms of the blowback, right? I'm sure you've been posting a lot of the comments around the speech.
People are like, you needed to be more focused on our accomplishments, or you needed to, I don't know, because I didn't go conventional platitude-y, because most commencement speeches are platitude-y, right? And to me, I don't know, I just don't resonate with that as much. So I'm a very practical person.
Were you surprised, though? I mean, I guess I was reading through the comments. You've been posting a lot of them. There were some students who said, this isn't the right time to talk about inflation being a problem, and why did you say Bitcoin? But it's people who like Bitcoin, and you're now one of them as well, over the last 3 months, it's tied to inflation.
Show me a book that says, thou shalt not talk about inflation at a commencement. Thou shalt not sing at an inflation. Thou shalt not meditate at an inflation. Show me the book. I couldn't find it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess that's the piece is what?
Where is this coming from? Come on, guys. We're about to have World War III because we're out of control. And so to me, this commencement speech was a wake-up call. And in one of my Instagram stories, I posted, I said, if this is a wake-up call, or you're already up, snoozing, or leave me alone. I was shocked. Actually, half the respondents said, leave me alone. And
yeah,
I'm like, guys, this is wake up. That's why my song was, when I wake up in the morning and I step outside, I take a deep breath and I get real high, right? And then I scream at the top of my lungs. I scream at the top of my lungs, what's going on? We have a problem and no one's realizing it. It's like there's a fire happening and I'm the only one that's guys, we have a problem.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think there's a lot of elements to this speech.
I was trying to do it very subtly, and I was trying not to be because I do want to honor that it is a commencement, and they have worked really hard for 4 years, right? And there's a lot of that too. But at the same time, I wouldn't be able to face myself in the mirror if I didn't at least try to use this opportunity to wake up the people in the stadium and also everyone else.
Yeah, I think
we have a problem.
It's a very good point, and I think, it's one that you tried to touch on in various different points. We're going to get in the piece on harmony in terms of how it's not just everyone doing the same thing, but respecting the other paths that people take to get up the mountain. I thought that was a really nice point. And I think people booing, again, you didn't say go buy Bitcoin, you just mentioned it, and I think it's kind of funny to think about people booing it.
I just said it's misunderstood. That's it.
And I think that probably proved the point. But it was interesting to see maybe people get into conspiracy mode, because there were a lot of tweets about the president of OSU and how this speech came to be. I want to put one of those conspiracy theories to bed if we can. There was an Anthony Lima tweet, I think. He's like a sports broadcaster in the OSU area, who was connecting the dots between the president being on the board of TerraWolf, a Bitcoin miner, and saying, that's why Chris Pan got picked. Chris, I'm sure that's not why you got picked, but why don't you talk to us about how that process went?
So I got an email in March asking me to be the commencement speaker. The president had just joined in January. I don't even know how involved he was in terms of this process because it probably was already happening before he got there. But I don't know. But in his office, never told me what to say.
Hmm.
I just, and by the way, I only really got into Bitcoin around mid-Feb, early March. So by the time I got the email, if you look at my Instagram, there's nothing Bitcoin on there, right? If you look at my Instagram, it's all about singing, all about meditating, all about standing up for different people that are in trauma and fighting and all that. That's who I am. The Bitcoin thing happened in February because I saw the ETFs come out, and then I made the connection between the ETFs and inflation, and then I started telling my brother, my family, my friends, and then I started realizing how little people actually understand about Bitcoin. So
Hmm.
that's when I started getting passionate about helping people. So, in terms of the involvement of the president, like he and I only met the night before the speech. We've never communicated before this past weekend,
Yeah,
right?
I
And
mean,
his
how
office never told me what to say, and I just intuitively realized like we have a problem with our financial system, and came to that conclusion on my own. And perhaps I think he's been on the board of TerraWolf for 5 years, so he's already seen the light well before I did.
were you surprised when you got picked? There are some people now writing stories about, oh, why weren't there other people? If the advisory committee, I think there's one publication saying the advisory committee must have had like 10 other people out there. How'd they land on Chris? And were you at all surprised when they did reach out to pick you?
I was. I genuinely couldn't believe it. I didn't even, when I got the email, the first line just says, "We want you to be a special guest at commencement." And
Hmm.
I did the math and I said, "Oh, I'm 25 years from when I graduated. They probably are just trying to get a bunch of alums back for like a 25-year reunion. So in a month, I'm going to Harvard Business School for my 20-year reunion for the business school, right?" So I just thought it was that. I didn't even read the second line. And the next morning, I was talking to my dad about at some point going to Ohio. And then I was like, "Oh, I got this invitation. Maybe I'll swing by commencement. Who knows?" And then I read the second line and it said, "And we want you to be the featured guest speaker." And I was really confused. I was like, "Wait a sec. Like, is this like a small reception? Are there multiple speakers?" It really caught me by surprise. I was deeply honored, obviously. And it was a dream come true. And I was crying that day, but I was not at all, expecting that.
Yeah, no, it's a cool experience to give a speech like that and to be included in, I think, a very big celebration. And I think clearly it struck a chord in terms of imparting wisdom. And as I said, Bitcoin was just a small part, but you kind of included quite a bit of other things in there, and you even alluded to the news coverage about your preparation for the speech, I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
I did.
you mentioned even some news publications talking about what
They
you
were saying
said
I was going
before
to
you
take my
get.
shirt off and all this stuff, and they just misunderstood things and misread things. I'm just like, guys, like, don't believe everything you read.
One of those big ones, I think, came from maybe it was something you posted on LinkedIn around ayahuasca intelligence or the idea of using
Yeah,
ayahuasca. Let me ask you this. Did you use ayahuasca to prepare for the speech?
yeah, 100%. I use ayahuasca to write music. I use ayahuasca for healing. It's been part of my healing and growth journey for the last 5 years. So it wasn't like I only did ayahuasca for this speech. It's been a part of my preparation for anything. It's such a healing and such a creative feel. You look
Hmm.
at John Lennon, you look at Steve Jobs, Jimi Hendrix. Lots of people have worked with sacred medicines as a way to, build new neural pathways. And the really interesting thing is, there was a student, a PhD student in the commencement. Her research was on the healing power of ayahuasca, and she graduates with a PhD. She's about to go to Utah to start her professorship. So
Hmm.
people treat ayahuasca as this crazy thing, and it's like, no, it's been around for hundreds and thousands of years. And pre '70s, it was very common, and then it got banned in the U.S. But it's a beautiful, beautiful medicine.
I think it was interesting because a lot of publications really honed in on that piece
They're
around
looking
the
for
coverage.
clickbait, right? They're,
I
they're
think that
looking
yeah,
for
the New York
something
Post,
to.
the New York Post had this, which is Ohio State commencement speaker was on ayahuasca when he wrote cringeworthy speech peddling Bitcoin, which I think we both agreed is not really what it was at all, forcing sing songs. And so, I mean, like, what's your reaction to maybe ayahuasca being such a big piece of the reaction to the speech?
I actually think it could turn out to be a beautiful thing. I think if everybody did ayahuasca, if everybody did meditation, if everybody sang, we would have world harmony. So if a title like that is what it takes to get ayahuasca into the forefront of our culture, then so be it. I just hope people are smart enough to do their own research
Hmm.
and not judge it just based on a headline, that they actually go and learn what is ayahuasca, why do people do it, and get curious. I think that will lead to a better society.
Were you on it? Well, you gave the speech too.
No, no, no. I did it like 2 weeks before. I mean, I had
I
been
see.
working with medicine throughout my preparation journey. The day that I got the email was the day I started taking notes. And I started just every time I had an idea, I would put it in my notepad. And then I had a few different journeys where I would then use it as a way to like integrate all the different ideas. So I thought of it as like a very powerful brainstorming session, put it that way.
Well, you were also posting
And
like a few different drafts, which I think is an interesting way to kind of do a commencement speech. You were posting a few drafts on your Instagram and a Google Doc, kind of leading up to it and getting
yeah, I,
feedback.
I wanted feedback because I haven't been in Ohio for 25 years.
Hmm.
And I'm not, college age, obviously. So I wanted to understand how it would resonate. And actually, I took a lot of the feedback in. For example, I was going to maybe specifically mention, anti-Semitism is not okay. What's happening in Gaza is not okay. But based on a lot of the feedback, I was encouraged to make it more like, hey, racism is not okay, and collateral damage, human collateral damage is not okay. So I definitely uh, gained a lot from the feedback, and I pulled some stuff out because I only had so much time, so it was really helpful to get that feedback.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, did the university itself, when you said they looked at your speech ahead of time, did they have any tweaks around what you wanted to do as well, and signing
Uh,
off on some of it?
Initially, they encouraged me to do a traditional speech, and then I told them that, hey, I think you got the wrong guy, because in the last 10 years of me speaking, I've never done a traditional speech, not one. I've always included a meditation. I've always included singing. That's just who I am. Those are my rules, you know. And then so we came to agreement that okay, like I could do a short song at the beginning, a meditation in the middle, and a song at the end. So we got that agreement, and then I think I submitted V4 to them over the weekend, and then I needed to have my final draft in on Monday. So Monday night, I sent in V8, and that was it. And the only edit they had back was I had put the names of four of the people who I really appreciated in terms of working with me on this, logistical side and whatnot. I put them in as a credits, like at the very
Hmm.
end. They just said, hey, just we don't need that because we just want the event to be about the students, and just we don't need that. So that's the only thing I removed was that.
Yeah, and you only had
So
17
everything else
minutes to
was
work
me.
with too. I mean, and there's not a lot of
No, I mean,
time when you're doing these. It's tough
they
to squeeze
originally
everything in there. And
they
I think
originally told
there
me
was
10.
stuff. There's always I think the hardest part of preparing a commencement speech is what works on paper versus in person, and
Yeah,
kind of how it's going to go.
yeah.
You also included, I don't know how many people watched this part of the speech. If they didn't watch the full speech, this is a piece as well. It was the magic trick with the president
Yeah.
of Ohio State as
Yeah.
well.
I've never
Want to
actually seen it.
play?
I'm curious how it looks.
Wanted to
Let's see how it
wanted to
looks
play.
now.
It's a little condensed here, but we'll just play that
Okay.
piece that you included too.
Let's hear it.
Now, if you entered the university here 4 years ago, 4 quarters is now worth 3 quarters of purchasing power. So that's the quarter that everybody lost due to inflation. Now, the 3 quarters that are left, I'm going to put back here. You guys ready?
Yep.
What do we got?
Bitcoin.
I learned magic trick last week just to be able to have this moment.
So it's hard to tell from the crowd response and watching it, but how did that go?
I didn't know. I just kept moving because they booed earlier, so I didn't want to dwell too much because I didn't know if they would boo again. So I just kept it going. But um, I'm so committed to educating that I'll do anything in order to get my point across. I want to make it memorable. I want to make it, something that people actually can remember. So, and also people like to be entertained, right? It was hard because the camera was so far away, but like it's much close. It's much cooler up close. I'll just say that much.
I will say this much too is, you're right. There's a lot of platitudes. There's a lot of speeches that have come from a lot of celebrities that are just kind of like follow your dreams and whatever. And maybe they're memorable, maybe they're not. Most likely they're
Yeah.
not. Usually they're selected because they're a famous person. And in this one, again, I haven't seen a commencement speech talked about or striking so many different kind of like love the speech, hate the speech. Was it surprising to you in terms of how polarizing it was?
Yeah, I was obviously hoping more for the love. I wasn't really wanting the hate part, to be honest. Like I thought the moments people would share would be like the singing parts, because that would be cool to see people singing, and maybe there'd be a couple little quotes that would be. I didn't think it'd be this polarizing at all. Obviously, like if I did, I wouldn't have probably done it. I don't know.
Yeah, I
So
mean, there's another one from Slate, which again, I don't know where the hate is coming from, to be honest with you, but it's
let's see.
out
Let's
there,
see.
and you
Oh
seem like
wow.
you really rolled with the punches. I
I
think,
haven't even
which
seen the
is
Slate one. Let's see. What do they say?
the Slate one's relatively new. It
I
said,
like
and
basically been trying to stay off the internet. I'm just like, like for my own mental health, but
it's a
show it.
smart way. That is
Yeah.
my main
Yeah.
takeaway. So again, take this with a grain of salt, I suppose. But
Yeah.
I don't know if we have this
See.
Texas or not. But
Enjoy
enjoy
this
this
tale.
tale of a low stakes campus screw up that has nothing to do with the Middle East, which I have no idea what that headline even means.
Yeah.
But again, saying reportedly hand selected by the school's president, who spoke mostly about Bitcoin, which again is probably not exactly what happened at all, seeing as I think it was like maybe 2 minutes out of your
No,
speech.
I think this is called clickbait. I think it's just pure clickbait.
Well, that was a big piece of your speech as well, which I wanted to
Yeah.
get into because I think it
Yeah.
was pretty important. You talked
Yeah.
about the news business and the news media and maybe avoiding echo chambers, which I think, again, social media, and I know you actually started at Facebook, so this is kind of an interesting topic to get into. But I want to play what you said about news and bias because as the founder of a community-owned news outlet that lets everyone kind of tell us what to do, it's a different model, but it really struck a chord with me as well. Let's take a listen.
It's so easy to stay inside your social media echo chambers. Take the effort to make new connections with folks who have different perspectives. And be very alert that news outlets are businesses that need eyeballs for advertisers. The news has been running all sorts of funny stories about this speech. And they're designed to get eyeballs. They'll run a clickbaity headline just to grab your attention. It might be partly true, but it's not fully true. So last thing is, when you use your voice, are you causing more divisiveness? Or are you part of the healing?
Now, weirdly, you kind of predicted that because even at the moment, people were writing about the speech, I guess, because they had seen the draft, but also now talking about it even more days after. So I'm curious to kind of hear more of your thoughts on kind of why you included that.
I think we're in an election year, and I'm just trying to do everything I can to keep the peace. And we all know that this happens, and I just wanted to throw another reminder out there, guys. Like, you're going to see clickbait. Don't fall for it, please. Like, we don't need more divisiveness in our country and in our world.
Yeah, and weirdly, I guess it's kind of happened even in your speech too, as we use that example from Slate, and maybe other ones around as well, as they kind of highlight pieces of it to maybe drive the attention economy. But I mean, I guess that's kind of also where we are as a society. I mean, what's kind of the takeaway in terms of what you were trying to tell people, not just in terms of using their voice to lean into avoiding divisiveness, but kind of how that even gets solved?
I think it's a consciousness, situation where uh, it's learning to think for yourself, think for myself. When we see something, like just taking a pause and just saying, hey, why am I feeling this way? Like, is this even true? Even if it is true, am I going to make it worse by whatever action I'm feeling like I want to take? Or can I actually be the flower in the gun? I alluded to that as well. And so I think we need more people to be the flower in the gun. Right now, everybody's holding a gun and trying to cause a lot of damage to each other.
Yeah, and I guess, in terms of your experience now post delivering this speech, which I'm sure it sounds like you didn't plan for kind of the reaction or kind of everything that happened afterwards. But now that it has, I'm curious if there's anything that maybe you would have done differently with the speech.
Yeah, I actually submitted the speech on Monday. I got to campus on Wednesday afternoon. I had nonstop meetings with students, faculty, more meetings Thursday, more meetings Friday. I had the rehearsal Friday afternoon. And then by Friday evening, I actually started thinking about, maybe I'm going to take out the investment part because there was just too much information. And then also because, a few people did say like Bitcoin is going to be polarizing and distracting. So I was like, okay, I'll take it out. So actually, I restructured my whole thing to be, and then also I got feedback from some students that they wanted more of a traditional speech. So I said, in college, usually you have lectures and then you have labs and you have recitations. So let's do 7 minutes of traditional speech, and then let's do 3 minutes of interactive stuff, right? And then I emailed the university and I said, hey, can we just allow me to do V9? And the next morning I got a response back. They said, let me check, with the production team. And then a couple hours later, they're like, no, sorry, it's too late, because they had to load everything into the closed caption system. And they had to get the slide, the slides already loaded, like everything was prepped. And there just wasn't enough time to get everything, for me to write a new version and then get it loaded in the system. It just wasn't going to be feasible. So at that point I said, you know what, V8 it is, like, just got to roll with it.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's always tough to do day of changes. Same thing for me.
Yeah.
Somehow they were able to include lean back from Fat Joe in my commencement speech to counter, because Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook Connection, was speaking there when I was speaking. So it was a nice little joke to play out on lean back from Fat Joe when she wrote lean in.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad.
Don't dance and just pull up my pants and do the rock away. Now lean back.
They were able to make that happen. But I think you ended your speech on a very good point, which again brings this whole thing full circle, which is about harmony and respecting the other opinions. As I said, I think it was pretty powerful in the way that you tried to kind of deliver it, and kind of how this has all gone, mostly in respecting other people's opinions, which, to your point, in an election year, probably going to be pretty important. Tough to keep it all together. But I just want to play that piece because I do think the harmony of it all really did come full circle.
Harmony is not everyone doing the same thing, but rather an intentional effort to respect others' paths up the mountain. There are many paths up the mountain. Just because we see the one doesn't mean that other person cannot go up their path.
Yeah, now, I mean, looking back on that, Chris, in terms of you getting booed by talking about Bitcoin at a speech where you were trying to inform people, I mean, how does that maybe prove the point?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Enough said. I don't know. I think it's going to take more than one 10-minute speech to really get these points across. It's taken me decades to learn this, and I'm grateful for this conversation. I'm grateful for other conversations. I'm going to host online digital Zooms this summer for people that want to go deeper in all this. My life's work has been in helping people understand their own voice, their own path, and also in understanding different intentions, such as tolerance, forgiveness, so on and so forth. So, we're just getting started. This is just yet another, we're at another point, and we'll just keep going.
Yeah. And I mean, you also gave away the free bracelets to everybody who was there as well, which you made the joke that it was a gift because you made them sit through a Bitcoin speech, which I thought was also kind of funny in terms of being in the moment and saying, look, you guys booed me, but I'm still doing this for you.
Yeah, I still love you guys.
As an apology for talking about Bitcoin, I'm going to gift everybody in the stadium your own custom My Intent bracelet.
And those are still coming out to everybody.
Yeah, they're coming out. We're getting the website built to be able to handle all the orders. It's a lot of orders. It's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars of real money for us to fulfill these orders. But I'm really honored to be able to share with them a little token that's going to be really powerful for the ones that actually lean into it to help them on their journey. Like, for so many people, it's been life-changing. So I'm excited for them to have it.
Yeah, we showed, honestly, what we want to end on is, your experience with this. We showed a few of the headlines again from people who were kind of, again, taking the negative approach. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk more about kind of, I suppose I saw the ones in the Bitcoin community because a lot of people were calling you legends and congrats on an awesome commencement speech. I mean, in terms of all the positivity that you've seen come from this, including people who are excited about kind of the reflection piece and living with intent and choosing their word that's going to be on their wrist now. I mean, that piece of it and putting that out into the world is kind of where we'll wrap this up. But how fulfilling has that been for you? Obviously, it was their day, but you gave the speech.
Yeah. It's absolutely their day, and I was just trying to be helpful. I'm often misunderstood, and people think I was there to self-promote my bracelets, which I don't take any money from. My mission is not to sell more jewelry in the world. Like, we actually have a line that says this is a service project. This is not, a jewelry company. So I think there's just a lot of misunderstandings. I put a slide out that said, hey, I want to be your life TA. I used to be a chemistry TA, right? People took offense at that. They thought I was, just, again, more self-promoting. But if you look at every speech I've ever given at corporations, that's always in my flow. At the end, I always say, like, I welcome feedback. I welcome staying connected. I'm here to serve. So I think people just don't understand who I am, and they just assume the worst based on their own, filter and perspective. So I'm really sorry that that they feel that way, and I hope to make things right. if you look at my Twitter account, I just have there's recently now I have some Bitcoin stuff, but before I was just I don't even have much of a Twitter account actually. So I'm really honored to now really be more involved in the Bitcoin community, but I'm pretty new to this whole thing. I'm like 3 months deep into Bitcoin. I don't even hold that much like relative to probably most people listening to this.
No, I mean, you were saying when we first chatted, you were saying that you kind of experienced it earlier on. You sold it like 2 years later.
I bought it in 2020 at the end. It was like mid 30s, right? And then some people were like, get some of this. I bought some. And then at the end of 2022, because I had some other capital gains, I needed a write off. And then I ended up selling it in the, I don't know, under sub 20. So I lost like 50%. But it was a small amount, and I was like, it's a tax write-off. But I forgot to buy back in, because I knew I was supposed to buy and hold. I didn't execute perfectly, whatever. So I'm not like a, OG Bitcoiner by any means, but I'm grateful to be a new member of the community. And I think the ETFs are going to bring a lot of new members into the community too. And I know, the OG Bitcoiners are very much like, oh, ETFs are bad or whatever. But, I think the ETFs still give you exposure to the upside, and it still is a great store of value. So I would just say to the Bitcoin community, embrace the new people, and it's okay if same with Harmony, right? It's okay if they prefer ETFs and you prefer an exchange or you prefer a hard wallet. Like, we can all get along.
I think it's a good note to end on, and I think again it's a good reflection in terms of my graduation where Bitcoin was. If someone had gone through all the things he went through, whether it was even the Fred chart or not, when I have bought some or more back then and held it now, I think. Looking back, we're going to have to check in as we go since this commencement speech.
It'd be fun to check in 5 years and be like,
how much people make or lose, depending on what happens. And again, you didn't even say to go buy it. But Chris Pan, I appreciate you coming on, and congrats again on the speech. Chris Pan there. Appreciate you taking the time, man. We'll see you again soon.